I'm only gonna explain the rules once, so you'd better listen carefully. Imagine it.
8 years ago, the very first episode of Cardfight Vanguard would air on January 8th, 2011. And of course, like every anime revolving around a trading card game, we needed to see a real-world counterpart so that they could make cold hard cash. So that fans of the series could feel connected and become more engrossed in the series they loved, by throwing cold hard cash at booster packs. And that's why on March 12th of that year, we saw the release of the very first booster box of Cardfight Vanguard in Japan. The series even picked up enough steam to be brought over to the West by December of the same year. But what is Vanguard? Where did it come from, and how did it grow to be one of the most popular TCGs in the world over the last decade? Cardfight Vanguard is a multimedia franchise produced by a company called Bushiroad, and they were founded in 2007 by Takaki Kirani. And the company was involved mostly in things like, well, anything and everything that they could get their hands on in the entertainment industry. From buying the New Japan Pro Wrestling Company, which I guess happened, to radio shows, magazine franchises, to anime studios, to video and card game production, they were in just about everything. And while they had decent success in all of these fields, they really seemed to be getting into card games as their focus, as they've made well over a dozen of them now. Some of the most popular being Weiss Schwarz, Future Card Buddy Fight, and of course, Cardfight Vanguard. Now, the success of Vanguard can probably be attributed to the anime of the same name. As I mentioned, the first episode aired just about 8 years ago, and aside from that making me feel like a living fossil, the anime did one thing extraordinarily well, and that was creating a strong sense of distinction between themselves and other card game anime right off the bat. I think with any card game focused anime, they feel an immediate need to compete with or to outdo the other major hitters of the industry. In terms of card games themselves, the major competition is Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh!, as they were the three biggest games in the world at the time. However, Magic the Gathering didn't have a running anime, and Pokemon's had very little to do with their trading card game, so Yu-Gi-Oh! Is what stood out. And it's pretty clear to see the similarities in how these franchises grew. Vanguard would go on to mirror the anime, manga, and TCG system, which had focused on the card game itself. However, they chose to start things off in a very different way. Yu-Gi-Oh! Right off the bat jumps into a life or death tournament with the help of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh whose soul is trapped inside his Millennium Puzzle, must rescue his grandfather's soul from the villainous Maximilian Pegasus. After that, Yugi and his friends take part in Seto Kaiba's city-wide tournament, of course ending in a game against Merrick Ishtar for the fate of the world. Now, let me just say, as far as entertainment goes, hell fucking yes. This series was so fun to watch, and it made me really want to play the game. And you could really relate to the series because you had your own Egyptian spirit that... oh right. Well, anyways, the citywide shutdown just so you could play card games are also not a thing. Huh. Well, at least the cards themselves were something that you could own. My personal favorite was Giant Soldier of Stone. You could combine it with the moon and... that's not a thing either, is it? I guess it was just for the anime. Well, hear me out. I know, okay, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime is its own thing, and it's meant to be pure entertainment, and like I said, it does a phenomenal job of that. What it does not do is give its viewers a sense of connection with the material that they're watching, and here's where Bushiroad saw their opportunity in Cardfight Vanguard. If you ask anyone what their favorite part of card games are, they'll say, I really like deck building, or playing the game with my friends, meeting new people, going to locals or regionals, and of course, it's trying to take over the world, Yugi boy. Now, terrible impression of Pegasus aside, one of them just doesn't fit, right? And that's why when the Cardfight Vanguard anime started, it followed a shy kid named Aichi Sendo as he discovered a popular card game called Vanguard. He made friends, learned to play, learned how to build better decks, got new cards, lost games and tournaments, and took parts in locals, regionals, and nationals. Now, of course, the show did have some supernatural elements in Psyqualia, which allowed some characters to draw or reveal whichever cards they needed to off the top of their deck. It's basically Heart of the Cards. But for the most part, the episodes and the characters involved with that are very few and far between in the early seasons. In the first season, actually, only Aichi and Ren had Psyqualia, and well over a dozen other characters who we saw regularly played with the real game, with real strategy and real cards that viewers could own and buy and use. There are very few cases where a card shows up in the anime and it doesn't have the exact effect in real life. And in fact, I can only think of one, and that card ended up not getting printed because it was too strong. All of this was the Vanguard anime's biggest strength: realism and interactivity with its fanbase. Of course, the franchise also had one more gimmick which a lot of fans of the show really seemed to like, and that was the idea of clans. You can think of this as being modeled largely after the 5-color system of Magic the Gathering, but on steroids. When the series started, there was 4 clans that each player could choose between: Royal Paladin, Oracle Think Tank, Nova Grappler, and Kagero. Each had their own unique playstyle and art style, and of course defining traits which their players would have. So a viewer who was energetic might be connected to the Nova Grapplers, while more reserved people might like Oracle Think Tank. But for those who didn't relate, Bushiroad had an answer with over 20 other clans being introduced over the next coming years. However, one of these clans changed everything for the anime, and that was Link Joker. As I said, the Vanguard anime's strongest pull was that it had realism. However, with the introduction of Link Joker, the anime would really struggle to keep that connection, and a leap of faith was made that the fanbase which had grown attached to the realism would stick with it after the plot got a little more, let's say, imaginative and alien-y, as beings from another world corrupted players, and for the most part, fans did stick with it. By this point, most players were less attached to the actual plot of the series itself as they were for watching for what new cards would coming out and how they worked and what they could be excited for in the future. Because of the basis in realism, they didn't need the plot of the actual anime to be good, as terrible as that sounds. What really mattered to most viewers was the real-life equivalent that would be coming, and having a small window into those cards in the anime. Now, the anime had grown and changed drastically over the years, each new season bringing with it a new mechanic. In the first Cardfight Vanguard series, we had Season 1, Asia Circuit, Link Joker, and Legion Mate, as well as a movie which I would prefer didn't exist and we could all forget. The Vanguard anime then saw a time skip of 3 years into their new series called Cardfight Vanguard G. This series focused on a boy named Chrono Shindo, and much like the original, we saw several arcs becoming their own mini-series: Gears Crisis, Stridegate, Next, and Z. And here's where Vanguard faced a major issue. The game progressed alongside the show and had become unbalanced and, in many cases, too expensive for new players. While many players loved the fast pace and powerful decks, it began to alienate the ones who were looking to join the game. There was simply too much to dive into, and this made it even more frustrating to new players with the main addition of the G era, the extra deck, adding a total of 15 more cards, which in many cases were insanely expensive and hard to attain. The average cost of a competitive deck had climbed between 200 and 300 to more commonly around 400, with some decks even reaching up to 600. And if you wanted to play with their higher rarity versions of the cards, it's gonna even be higher. This meant that the game was more expensive and harder to break into for new players, which was a horrible recipe for a game looking to expand its base. In looking for an answer to this, Bushiroad looked towards the west to find what might be a good draw to new players. What they found was an overwhelming majority of Western TCG players played Magic the Gathering, a game with a format called Standard which rotated out old cards and was welcoming to new players because of it. Here they got the idea of rebooting the series. The anime would begin again from the very beginning in Vanguard V series, this time closely following the plot of a manga. Along with this, the game would be split into Premium and Standard formats. Premium was where players could use any of their new or existing cards, and Standard was where they would have to use cards from the V era. Many fans were left with mixed feelings about this. However, there were loads of players, myself included, who had left the game as it had become too complex and too expensive for us, and were happy to see a return to roots. And that's more or less where we stand with Vanguard right now. We're just about at a point where every clan has been reintroduced in the V-Series. with a large base of fans still enthusiastic about the premium format. It's still not entirely clear where the series is headed, but with a new wave of support coming very soon, players are basically waiting to see how Bushiroad will continue to grow the game. Will it be a return to the aggressive power creep and complex design of the G series? Or will they finally be able to balance things in a manageable way for the game to progress? All in all, we'll have to wait and see. But for now, I want to thank you all so much for watching, and especially a big thank you to my patrons, Decimus and Akuyasa. If you'd like to support the channel, the link for the Patreon is in the description down below. It allows me to make my production value a little bit better, and I am trying to do a giveaway once every month or two, and this helps to fund that. If you'd like to see more videos on history in the future, be it on Vanguard, specific cards, or in other animes, let me know in the comments section below. You can also hit the like button to let me know that you enjoyed this one. And if you did enjoy, feel free to subscribe for more anime and Vanguard content. But with that being said, this has been Miracle Trigger, and I will see you in the next video.